J. Michael McCoy.
No, I'm not J. Michael McCoy. I haven't been today, and I won't be tomorrow. My name's Chris Roloff. I'm filling in for Mac. He's lost on the highway. There was a freak snowstorm, actually, today in Clive. It was very unexpected to be, right here in the middle of September. There was a snowstorm just around his house. He's been barricaded in with snow. We hope that he'll get here sometime. But, of course, our guest today is Mark Laaser, and we'll get to him in just a few minutes. The regular cast of characters are all here. Bob is the cat in the hat watching the chat. I have to say the cat in the hat to get the chat part out. It's just a part of my psyche. Max says it so much. Yeah, that's true. And I'm here. And so people can chat with me and ask questions, and I will forward them to whoever. Max says that there's a chat. How do we get to the chat? If we want to say something we can't call in, how do we do that? What do you go to Webcast One Live? Webcast One Live, yep. You can do it that way, or Max World Live. Max World Live. And either way, and then you have to make a name. But it doesn't cost anything to just. It doesn't cost anything, and we don't follow up to try to figure out who's on. Nope. So it can be secretive, and you can make up a funny name and go on there and say whatever you want. People do that all the time. Is that how we met our other regular co-host, Frank? Is that how we met you?
No.
How did we come to know you,
Actually,
Frank?
you come to know me by I was calling in.
That's right, the nickname The Voice.
The Voice.
That's
and
right.
then it quickly changed to The Verse.
That's right, because of your knowledge of the Scriptures. So, and also Ryan Northfield is producing the program today. And our topic for today's broadcast is one, it's nice that we have a room filled with men today, because, and Mark will probably correct me on this, no doubt, but most men struggle in some way with looking at pornography. More so, I think, than they have in the past. Pre-internet days, it was a little bit tricky to get your hands on some dirty images. You had to go to a store somewhere and buy a magazine or something like that. Nowadays, it can come right to your mobile device. It can find you anywhere you want to be found, and it wants to find you. Our guest today is Mark Laaser. Mark, welcome to The View from a Pew. I'm Chris Roloff, temporarily, as I mentioned, filling in for Mac. Welcome to the show today, sir.
Well, it's nice to be with you today. And by the way, just so for some of the listeners, the pronunciation of my name is Laaser. That's not how it looks, but that's what my great-grandmother decided years ago.
Well, I apologize. I literally just sat down because I was here as the program director of 99.3. I was going to give Max some things to say on the air today to promote here at the station, and he wasn't here, and I just said, better sit down and start talking.
Well, that's okay, Chris, because Mac's been calling him Laaser for the last two shows.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to correct him on the air, but and embarrass him or something. But
it's okay to Chris.
Mark. He self admits he's terrible with names. He has to write it phonically. He has to write all names phonically if he's to get it right.
Well, and apparently that Laaser should be pretty easy to remember, Mark. I would imagine that Laaser is not a difficult to say word.
Well, it was my nickname in high school.
Is that right?
The Beam.
The Beam. Awesome.
Laser
Beam. The Beam.
But no relation. I mean, the word laser is for the technology of that is an acronym, but. Anyway, it was anglicized in World War I, basically, because back in those days nobody wanted to associate with being German. So that's how that happened. But I hope Mac is okay and doing well. I have grandchildren and Ames. It's not snowing up in Ames, I hope.
Yeah, no, it's a freak snowstorm in Clive, and I'm completely kidding. I'm completely kidding. Believe it or not, he is only feet away, really, and I have no idea why he's not in here. But we'll just keep going. And it's. But I'm honored to be filling in for Mac temporarily because, Mark, just to let you know a little bit about me, I'm 37. I'll be 38 years old this year, and I am positive, Mark, that you meet and interact with guys my age frequently. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that would be absolutely true.
I mean, I say that because I remember in high school when the internet became a thing that was regularly used for me when I was in high school. And of course, the teachers told us the internet's going to be great because it's going to be like having a whole library at your fingertips.
Right.
And I thought to myself, that is completely not interesting to me. And I always tell people it wasn't until one of my favorite rock and roll bands got a website that I even cared about the internet. But the internet brought us something far worse than just a rock and roll website, didn't it?
Well, it certainly did. In fact, I think one of the things most people don't understand is that in those early days of the internet, one example, organized crime got involved real early on, and I had the great pleasure one day of testifying in front of the United States Congress about the trafficking of internet pornography, and I was sitting next to the director of the FBI, who was filling these congressmen in on some of the origins of the business aspects of the internet. And it became clear to me from what he was saying that organized crime got involved very early. One of the things they started doing before most of us were aware of it is buying up domain names. So my favorite to mention right now, because it's no longer an internet pornography site, but at one point an organized crime syndicate owned the domain name Coke.com.
Wow.
So if you were, just looking for the pause that refreshes, a Coca-Cola or something like that, and you went to Coke on the internet, instantly you would be confronted with very graphic pornographic pictures. the Coca-Cola Corporation had to buy the website back from this syndicate, and they made them pay $3 million to do it. They bought up a whole bunch of other. There's fairy tale characters. WhiteHouse.com is a pornography site, for example. WhiteHouse.gov is the pornography site of the official White House. So the point being that organized crime is involved a lot in the transmission, promotion, and ability to pay for, pornographic materials on the internet. And that was all back in the mid-'90s when that was really becoming popular. And now, with the advent of the social media sites, we all know most recently about, Ashley Madison and so forth, that
right.
The ability to connect on the internet quickly for sexual purposes has really grown leaps and bounds in the last 5 to 10 years. So the internet definitely, as you were told as a school kid, has its values. There's absolutely no doubt about it. All of us use it every day. I use it to Skype with missionaries that I work with all over the world. And it definitely has a dark side. And the truth of it is that the internet views or hits on a pornography site outnumber almost all other forms of media on the internet. If you combine Netflix and all the other services that provide things, and you combine all those, the amount of pornography website hits would far outnumber that. So it's just been what we call a tsunami. It's about 20 years old, and it's just grown exponentially, particularly in the transmission of pornographic and sexually inappropriate behavior.
So, Mark, what you're saying is it's pretty dangerous to make a typo on the computer when you're typing for a website.
That's exactly it, and that's what's led to. Yeah, that's exactly it. And how many listeners right now have had that experience?
Oh, absolutely. I've had that myself, and it's terrifying how much those images are in a lot of news sites. We're a radio station that we read a lot of news online, and some of our broadcasters contribute to online journals, articles, magazines, and things like that. And just the hyperlinks and the click-aways and the side banners and all that stuff, some of that stuff is absolutely terrible. I'm Chris Roloff. Our guest is Mark Laaser. He's with Faithful and True. Is it Faithful and True Ministries? Is that the name?
Faithful and True Ministries is our common name, but Faithful and True Inc. is our official name. Yeah.
And their website is faithfulandtrue.com. That's faithfulandtrue.com. And straight from the snowstorms of Clive, Iowa, my friend and yours, J. Michael McCoy, is in studio with us now, Dr. Laaser.
Hey, Doc, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Mac?
Good. Listen, I just walked in here, so I want you guys to continue the conversation because I don't know where you're at, and I'm just going to hang up and listen.
You're just going to hang up and listen. No, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, I just want to listen to what you guys are talking about. It's interesting.
Well, we kind of just, I didn't know what to say. I was in here to talk to you, and the show started, so I figured I better say something.
Yeah.
But, we started out with this talking about the Internet. I grew up, I told Dr. Laaser, I'm 37 to be 38 this year, and I assume that he's going to see a lot of guys my age coming to him because my generation specifically, since high school, has had Internet access since high school, and pornography is literally just a click away, and things that are horrendous and awful. And I would say most guys my age have looked at things that we have no business looking at.
All right, so here's the question I want to ask, Doc.
Yeah.
I'm on the computer a lot. I'm on Facebook a lot because I do business on Facebook. My listeners who listen to this radio show and watch my webcast, watch our webcast, find them on Facebook. So that's where I can post questions. I can do some theory. I can ask who's interested in this, who's interested in that. I do email. I'm on YouTube. I do not think I've ever had a pornographic pop-up.
Okay.
Now, what am I doing right? I mean, I don't have angel keys. I don't have any of that. And is it because I don't have that inner desire to see pornography? Oh, believe me, I have my sins of lust. But watching somebody on a television screen just absolutely does nothing for me.
Yeah. Well, you make an interesting point, and I don't want to embarrass anybody, but the truth is that there's all kind of tracking bugs in our daily Internet use. So if you've gone at any point in your life to an inappropriate pornographic site, you are going to be more susceptible to inappropriate stuff, at least popping up in sidebars. So, maybe what you're saying there, Mac, is that, you haven't ever looked at the stuff on the computer, so you're a little bit less likely than the average person for this stuff to just pop up. But are you taking into consideration, let's say you're on Facebook or whatever internet provider for emails you have, any of the services that we use here, we get sidebars that pop up. And part of my problem is that I do email back and forth with the men that I serve, and those men have been looking at lots of pornography. So I occasionally get stuff popping up on my computer because the bug has been transferred to my computer, even from their emails. So I'll tell you, the people who designed this stuff, we were talking about that before you came in, about the organized crime controlling a lot of this. They're the ones that developed the technology to track where we're at, to know what we're looking at, to know what our favorite things are, and then to tempt us with, advertisements. If we've even Googled the name of a car, you can be sure of the fact that we're now going to all of a sudden get pop-up ads for cars.
Yeah, and when we come back from the break, I'll tell you how I experienced that lately. Because as I tell you, I don't get some of this. I was doing a little research on something, and by golly, guess what I started getting? Anyway, Chris, I'll let you take us to break.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what you were doing research on. I don't want to know. But anyway, you're listening to The View from a Pew. I'm Chris Roloff, for some reason sitting in for J. Michael McCoy.
What's going on tonight?
Oh, that's right. We've got live coverage of the GOP debate. We're the only radio
Both of
station. That's right. The whole thing tonight. We start our coverage at 5 o'clock right here on 99.3 FM. So that's free for your listening ears. Only radio station in the market doing it. You're listening to the new 99.3 FM. We're the Truth Network.
Powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
That's what I've heard.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
This is Chris Roloff filling in for J. Michael McCoy, and in a strange turn of events, J. Michael McCoy is in studio with us, along with Bob Montserrat and Frank the Verse Thomas. And
Who's
Ryan,
Bob Montserrat?
The cat in the hat watching the chat.
Very good.
Yeah.
And who's he?
Frank the Verse Thomas.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
And who's he?
Ryan, our producer.
Talented.
Exceptional talent.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, all those things.
Best producer except for
Frank the Verse.
See, there we go.
And who's he?
He's J. Michael McCoy.
I'm just
live high atop the Merle Hay Towers.
I'm just sitting on the other side of the mic today because I was in a meeting and Chris was nice enough to come in here. Actually, Bob was going to do it, and then you walked in. You had an interesting point off mic, and I want to hear that point, and I want to share it with Dr. Laaser.
Yeah, so our guest today is Dr. Mark Laaser, Faithful and True Ministries, faithfulandtrue.com. And Dr. Laaser, what we were talking about in the break so rudely without you is I have an idea possibly as to why guys my age struggle with internet pornography, whereas a person Mac's age and part of his generation doesn't. And here's kind of my idea.
And I'm 56 and you're 36.
I'll be 38 this year.
All right, so we're 18 years apart.
Right.
So you're my son's age.
Right. And I think one of the differences might be exposure to pornographic images at a young age.
Yeah, because here's what I had.
Right.
My dad, who's a great guy, just a great guy all around, he had a Playboy magazine under his socks in the top drawer.
Right.
I don't know how I found it.
Right.
But I found it. And it really didn't do much for me.
Right.
This is going to sound funny, but I like the cartoons the most.
Sure.
Okay. Stag films, or what we would know is, I've never seen a stag film.
Right.
I've never gone anywhere where somebody's put a video in or a reel, 8mm reel or whatever, and watched pornography.
Right.
All right. And when I get on the computer, now I know I'm a little older than you, but I've been on the computer since the early 90s.
Right.
But I still, even back then, I don't know. I just don't see
But would you say, and this is a topic, we didn't kind of say this, but I don't imagine we've got any small children here, but we're going to be talking about sex probably a lot on today's broadcast, I can imagine. But you probably, a lot of your sexual experience, Mac, probably was actually from relational things, right? I mean,
from live people.
Right.
Yeah. My first girlfriend was Linda Kelly.
Right.
She was a gorgeous redhead in the first grade. And then in the 5th grade, it was Cindy Hansen. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but I literally can walk you through. After Cindy Hansen, my next girlfriend was Kathy Heasterman, and the next one was Barb, which I dated all the way through my high school years.
Right.
And then I got married before, I got married less than a year out of high school.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there was no pornography. There was also no dope or beer because I didn't drink when I was a kid.
Right. So Dr. Laaser is our guest, Dr. Mark Laaser. Doc, what do you say here? What are you hearing us say?
Well, I'm hearing Mac talk about the fact that I think he is one of those people that, in a lot of ways had the good fortune not to get exposed to it more directly. I have plenty of clients who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. My oldest client was 95, actually.
Whoa.
And they're Chris, I have, my average client is, more your age, in the 30s and 40s, and I have an 18-year-old client. My youngest client that the parents wanted me to work with him was a 5-year-old who had gotten into the internet. So, I've seen the full spectrum. Pornography's always been out there. The difference is that you had to know earlier on where to find it. I think the most common story, actually, for the men my age, I'm 65, is that we did find it in our father's collection. But if we had addictive, tendencies, vulnerabilities, we didn't leave it at that. We stole it out of the sock drawer. We hid it under our bed. We, did other stuff, and then we figured out how to find it ourselves and that kind of thing.
Dr. Laaser, is that part of the key then, that repeated exposure? I mean, I think about hearing Mac's story. He just kind of had the one, wasn't too impressed with it, and moved on. Right. But is it the repeated exposure?
Oh, I opened up the trifold every month, just to see who the girl of the month was in Playboy. But that's it. I don't want you to think I went once and looked at it.
Oh.
I looked every month for the new edition of the trifold, and then I looked for the cartoons, and I was done. But there was no arousal for me. There was no...
Yeah.
I couldn't take it home. I couldn't hold it. It couldn't nurture me. So it didn't mean anything to me. I like puppies better than naked girls in pictures.
Well, I just think, Mac, you're just demonstrating that you didn't have the vulnerabilities that other boys would have had. That might have led them to get more preoccupied with that. Would have led them into, self-stimulation. Would have led them into inappropriate sexual behaviors with girls early on. There definitely is a group of boys, teenagers, young men who are in fact more vulnerable to this for a variety of reasons.
Doctor, I want to split a hair with you on something. What is this dangerous link that some people fall into the trap of pain and sexuality? And I see that as probably the most dangerous thing in our society because...
You're talking about like S&M?
Yeah, sadomasochism.
Okay.
Right.
Even, torture, et cetera, but the idea that somehow sexual pleasure comes from pain. I mean, most people, when they have an experience with pain, I'll just say they'll shrivel up, to be politically correct.
Right.
But other people who become full on with that pain experience, that just seems like a dangerous thing. And what's the weak link, or what is it in the DNA? What is it that is causing that? Have you pinpointed that at all? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I definitely do. One of the things we need to talk about whenever we get to what is generally called fetish-type behaviors, and that's, pain exchange is, a fetish behavior. That's all been pretty much linked to associations that were made as a child or early adolescent. So the cases of sadomasochism and pain exchange that I've had, at some point in that child's life, there was an association between sexual arousal and pain. The one example that I think would be the easiest is that there was a guy that he was being sexually abused by a boy, and when he threatened to talked to somebody else about it, the boy, more or less beat him up. So even though it was a sexually abusive experience, it had also created sexual arousal for the boy. And then right away, that sexual arousal got kind of linked in his brain with pain. And there is some kind of link, is what I'm saying, between sexual arousal and a painful experience probably in all likelihood, childhood.
Well, we have a lot of predators in our society that
right.
How God manages to keep sometimes the saints and the sinners separate and their paths don't cross. Because I've heard there's predators who will put 250,000 miles a year on an automobile, just traveling the interstate systems looking for a prey. And you just hope that your son or daughter doesn't have a flat tire the day that guy happens to be crossing their paths. So...
Dr. Laaser, Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. His ministry is Faithful and True Ministries. You can find out about Dr. Laaser online at faithfulandtrue.com. Dr. Laaser, one of the sad things I'm sure you deal with. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Laaser. It's right in front of me. I see it. Dr. Laaser.
That's fine.
The sad reality, and I'm sure you experience this all the time, is that this stuff is going on inside the church, that abuse is going on inside the church, that addiction to pornography and these things are going on inside the church. How are you addressing this issue inside the church in addition to the counseling that you provide?
Well, I've had 3 calls today from denominational leaders about hierarchy and church officials that have been involved in inappropriate sexual sin in the church. So I do get involved at the level of trying to help church leaders prevent this. I mean, I've written a couple of books about how to prevent pastoral sexual moral failure. And the answer to that is screening at a much earlier level than what we've done it. But, given the fact that, I have my own history and that I'm an ordained pastor, I've been really interested in what leads clergy into doing these kinds of things, and have written very extensively about it. So I consider it part of my making amends almost for, some of the sins that I committed early on in my life, to help be on the preventive side of this. And I do work with a lot of clergy who have gotten themselves in a whole lot of trouble.
Dr. Laaser, do you find that it's not talked about enough in the church? I mean, in terms of from the pulpit or within Sunday school programs, kind of thing?
I think, and here's a dramatic statement on my part, I think it's one of the most neglected topics in the history of the church. We just have not taught well enough about it. We've not created, biblically based sermon series about sexuality. We've not taught about it in our youth groups and so forth. We don't have, many of us, an idea of what God's design for healthy sexuality is about. So as a result of that, all we've ever taught when we do teach things is all the things you should not do, which are, of course, based on God's commandments. But if all we tell people is what they shouldn't do, then it kind of increases the vulnerability of rebelliousness.
Yeah, and so I was going to say, Dr. Laaser, the one thing I know about all human hearts is they're filled with rebellion, and the more you tell me the more I want to do it. So, yeah, we have to, I agree with you, we have to have a positive answer, how we should behave, how we should see men and women, ourselves and each other and those kinds of things.
We're working with a couple right now that their 16-year-old son just started dating, and these two 16-year-olds are in total infatuation, and we know what the obvious physical attraction there. So they're struggling with what kind of boundaries to put in place and dating and all this kind of stuff. And I basically have been adding to this mix, and they've actually started a Bible study with these two, in which they're kind of going through Scripture a little bit on what is God's design for marriage. And what is the reason that God wants us to wait until we're married to be sexual? I mean, it's one thing to say to these two, don't have sex, don't get pregnant, don't even put yourself in a dangerous situation where that might happen. It's another thing, I think, also to challenge them about why. I mean, why are you waiting? Why would you not want to do this? we've got to help our young people, I think, with internal motivations based on a vision for God's design on their life rather than just the don'ts. And that, I think, is something that the church with a capital C has really neglected us about.
Absolutely. Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. His ministry is Faithful and True Ministries. You can find Dr. Laaser and the work that he does online at faithfulandtrue.com. And an interesting thing to note, one of our partners, Alistair Begg with Truth for Life Ministries, he has an audio book that's available free right now called Lasting Love. It's about building healthy and strong marriages, and that audiobook is absolutely free right now. If you go to truthnetwork.com, you can register, enter to win a free copy of this book.
And today at 5 o'clock, you'll hear the entire Republican debate, both of them, the junior squad and the senior squad, or whatever you want to call them, tonight until the end. So stick with us, and we'll be here with you. If you can't be in front of a television, or if you're like me and you'd rather hear it than listen to it, tune into the Truth Network, and we'll get you that all night long. Right here on The Truth, 99.3, powered by WebcastOneLive.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
This is Chris Roloff filling in for J. Michael McCoy, who has now left the building, much like Elvis, but not forever.
Back into the snowstorm.
Back into the snowstorm in Clive, Iowa. Filling in for him today. It is September 16th, 2015. It's a little after 2:30 in the afternoon, and it's a nice day, don't you think,
Now, you
Frank?
do realize there is certain parts of the United States it does get snow in September, particularly up in like Wyoming, etc.
Is that right? Well, maybe it's coming this way, Frank. Maybe it's coming this way. Of course, Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, watching the chat. Frank DeVers Thomas and Ryan is producing, and Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. He's with Faithful and True Ministries, and today's program is the very easy to digest topic of pornography and how it's a very real issue in not just the world today, but it's an issue that is happening inside the church, as we talked about just before we went to break. It's something that's happening amongst the clergy, amongst pastors, and, of course, it's happening in the pews as well. Dr. Laaser, thanks for sticking with us. Our co-host here, Doctor, are you a doctor?
Only on occasion.
Only on occasion. Bob has a question for you, Dr. Laaser.
Yeah. Now, I guess my question has to do with addiction. Would you consider the pornography an addiction?
Yes, definitely. It can be an addiction.
Well,
for some, yeah.
How about, for instance, alcoholism or drug addiction? They're considered addictions. They're considered things that people do to fill a void that is within them.
Right.
Now, when you look at the church, and for instance, pastors, I've heard numbers like 50% are into porn of the pastors, in the faith, and what I'm thinking is that something that is perceived as less of an addiction than if they were an alcoholic or a drug addict or a food addict or whatever? Are there different degrees that make porn worse than anything else?
Not really. I think one of the things that makes porn so dangerous is how easily available and accessible it is. The number one device that's being accessed today is a smartphone. What makes anything an addiction is, what kind of chemistry does it create in the brain? So alcohol, that's pretty obvious, as are any of the other drugs that, heroin, marijuana, and so forth. The chemistry of sexual arousal and sexual behavior is, very profound. Has a very dynamic effect on the brain. Can lift a mood or suppress a mood, depending on what stage of the cycle you're in. So we do know that whether you're looking at porn or involved in fantasy or, self-stimulation or having affairs, the sexual arousal of that can create definitely an addiction in the human brain. It really doesn't make any difference what the severity in terms of a hierarchy of sin is. As to whether or not it's addiction or not. There are guys that are only thinking about inappropriate thoughts, and they can be just as addicted as the guy that's out there having one affair after another.
Right, but alcohol and drugs can also cause brain effects.
They do.
Gives you courage, or you can be depressed, depending on if you take a downer or an upper or whatever the case is, stimulant,
right.
Narcotic. So aren't there similar brain effects, even that porn will give?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, that, alcohol generally is considered a temporary, depressant or suppressant, and it's basically used in a lot of cases to calm the brain down. What we're talking about, whether it's a chemical you ingest or a behavior that creates a chemical in the brain becomes used to it, and it's going to demand more and more of that substance over time to achieve the same effect, and that's what we call tolerance. And a gambling addict, for example, what's the neurochemical that's produced there? It's adrenaline. So adrenaline junkies, whether they gamble or jump out of airplanes, they're going to need more and more adrenaline over time to achieve the same effect of that adrenaline. That's why we think, by the way, that video games are so harmful for kids. We're basically creating shorter attention spans and getting them all hooked into kind of an adrenaline addiction in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. You can find out more about him at faithfulandtrue.com. Faithful and True Ministries is his organization. He specializes, is this right, in counseling and helping those addicted to pornography?
Well, pornography and other forms of sexual sin and sexual addiction. All forms of infidelity is what we deal with here.
And Frank, you had a question.
Well, as pertaining to pastors and clergy, I find the ease of the computer where they actually used to go and look in books. Now everything can be accessed on the computer. You can access, you have software that you can access all your words in Greek. They can produce their sermons online. They type them on a notebook, etc. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is the ease of the temptation almost too great? Is this where you think it's stemming from? Just being at the computer?
Yeah, the computer or the internet in general has been called the crack cocaine of sexual addiction. So it's made it so much easier to obtain. And therefore, it has hooked a lot more people into it. I mean, we're talking about an escalation of addiction here, the likes of which culture has never seen. So it's really a tsunami, and it's overwhelming our young people. That is for sure.
Dr. Laaser, I have a question for you. I think one of the things that we've learned during this broadcast is that pornography use, its access, it's definitely a major issue in the United States and around the world, really.
Right.
So statistically, we know someone who is struggling with this on some level. Many of our listeners probably know someone, or they are someone who are struggling with this. How do we go about confronting someone, a friend, or a child, or a spouse, when we believe or know that they're involved in pornography use or in inappropriate sexual behavior? How do we open that door of conversation?
That's a great question. By the way, I cover this in a whole chapter in my book, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Addiction, about how to make an intervention. And I basically teach it off the teaching of Jesus in Matthew 18 about if one of your brothers has offended or offended you, you go talk to him face to face. If he listens and repents and so forth, then you've gained a brother. If he doesn't, then you gather the elders of the church and you do a more formal intervention, and then hopefully the product of that intervention is he goes and gets some help. If that doesn't happen, then of course Jesus instructs us to, disfellowship this person. I think the most effective intervention, one-on-one, and that the first part of that is when another person who has had a history of this and has now found freedom is able to tell a testimony. Mm. So that's the way Alcoholics Anonymous got started, with the two founders meeting one night, and the one guy, Bob Smith, heard Bill Wilson's story. And if Bill Wilson had gone to preach at him, he wouldn't have listened. But Bill Wilson went and told his own story, and that was enough to wake him up. And they talked all through the night, and that was Alcoholics Anonymous meeting number 1. And I think the same for people struggling with sexual sin. Those of us that have ever struggled with it, like I have, and overcome it. I mean, I think one of the things that I do all the time in my writings, in my lecturing, and in my counseling is to share my own story. I think that's the best way to make that one-on-one intervention. And then if there's a bigger problem, then we bring more formal means of intervening and getting people off to treatment.
Dr. Mark Laaser is my guest. Faithful and True Ministries online at faithfulandtrue.com. He's the author of the book, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Addiction. I'm sure you can find that wherever books are stored, but definitely online at faithfulandtrue.com. You're listening to the Truth Network on 99.3 FM. We've got a lot more to talk about.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I've purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you sit in the back pew or the front pew, it's your voice we want to hear. The phone lines are open, so call 244-0077. Now, here's J. Michael McCoy.
I wanted to do my impression of J. Michael McCoy, but I'm just not very good at it. This is Chris Roloff sitting in for J. Michael McCoy, who has vanished, has left the building. I think this topic of conversation has made him uncomfortable. The studio guests we have today, our co-host as always, Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, watching the chat. Frank the Verse Thomas and Ryan is producing. But most importantly, our guest today is Dr. Mark Laaser. His last name is spelled L with an L, and I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't think I have it written down properly. Spell it for me, Bob.
Laaser. Hopefully I have that right.
Yes. Is that right, Dr. Laaser?
That is right.
Man, and I was just informed by our producer, this is the 3rd time we've had you on, and we're just now getting your last name right. So we apologize.
Well, it's a funky name. What can I say?
You'd think Laaser in our modern era, that Laaser would be easy to remember, but apparently it's a little tricky. And today, Dr. Laaser is our guest for the 3rd time because this, as we're learning again today, is a topic that is filled with questions. We're definitely going to bring up more questions today than we'll actually have answers to. And if you have questions about if you are involved in sexual inappropriate relationships or if you have sexual addiction, whether it's pornography or anything like that, I definitely encourage you to go to faithfulandtrue.com, faithfulandtrue.com, and learn more about Dr. Laaser. His book is Healing the Wounds of Sexual Addiction. And Dr. Laaser, thanks for sticking around with us. We have a few more minutes on this broadcast, and we're going to try to come at you fast, but here's Frank.
I had a question that you mentioned a little earlier that kind of intrigued me. You said you was treating someone 95.
Right.
I'm 58. You're 65. You know what happens when the male body starts losing testosterone? Some of this stuff goes away naturally.
Right.
What keeps someone at 95? Are you still vaguely tempted at your age at 65? What keeps someone going at 95 that this is still intrigues them?
Well, testosterone is an interesting thing, and I'm certainly, I'm a PhD, not an MD, so it's really hard for me to comment about medical types of issues there. But I think if you continue to involve yourself in sexual activities, hopefully healthy ones, but if they're sinful ones, like this guy did since he was 12 years old, he kept his testosterone level up pretty high. And by the time I think he was in his 80s and 90s, it had somewhat turned into more of a romance or love addiction, meaning that he wasn't, for the most part, having sex with older women, although he was going on one of the Ashley Madison type of sites, and there are specialized ones for senior citizens, believe it or not. And he was having an average of 3 sexual encounters a month because of those websites. So I don't know. We don't have the ability here to take their testosterone level. All I know is that he was still very active, and he was living in a senior center, which, given the ratio of widows to men there, I mean, it gave him some.
Well, I was just going to mention that because over the age of 65, I think women outnumber men at a ratio of about 5 to 1.
And a lot of them are rather lonely, and there's been a number of things, in my career that have surprised me, and one of them has been the prevalence of these senior dating connecting sites. So
sure,
it's really fascinating when you think about it.
Dr. Mark Laaser is our guest. His ministry is Faithful and True Ministries. Find him online at faithfulandtrue.com. Dr. Laaser, in a previous segment, we were talking about confronting our friends, our children, our spouses that are involved in this behavior. And I think that's really what I want to make sure we leave our listeners with today, that sexual addiction in all of its forms is no longer relegated to the shadows. It's no longer this, well, it shouldn't be relegated to the shadows. Let me say that. In fact, maybe that's part of the problem. Would you agree, Dr. Laaser, that we don't talk about it in the church enough, that we all try to pretend like it's not happening?
Yeah, the shame of sexual sin is very profound, and it goes back to the Garden of Eden. It's part of original sin. Adam and Eve were naked and not ashamed, and then original sin happened, and that's when shame about sexuality, I think, started. But yes, the shame in the church. I mean, the church historically, if sexual sin was exposed, we talk about the fact that the church has tended to shoot its wounded. So, from clergy on down to people in the pew, they're afraid to get honest about this. And, the greatest enemy of sexual health and purity is shame and secrecy. So, I always like to end shows by just encouraging anybody out there who knows someone or is someone who's struggling with this that, your number one step in getting help and getting free of this is to get honest about it.
Absolutely. Well, I think of, and I've got the Bible in front of me, this is something that all of us as Christians should commit to memory, and that's James chapter 5, verse 16.
Confession.
That's right. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. It starts with confessing our sin. When we pretend as though we don't have this problem, we can't talk about it openly and begin to get healing.
That is exactly it. That's one of my theme passages of our ministry, too, is that, there will be no repentance, there will be no healing without confession. And the idea of doing it always produces a lot of anxiety. And that's why we need to pray for the intercession of the Holy Spirit to give us the courage, to get honest. A lot of us, if we don't get honest about this, something will happen eventually and we will get exposed, and then there may be more consequences.
Absolutely.
Doctor, in alcohol addiction, they have sponsors, and I think oftentimes in any addiction, we need that one person to hold us accountable, personally accountable.
Right.
Do you suggest that for this type of addiction also?
Well, that's called a sponsor in the 12-step program.
Right.
I think accountability involves a group of men. I think it involves more than one. I think we need an army. I have a whole book on accountability based on the book of Nehemiah, which is on our website, by the way. But I think we need a group. I think we need a community of men that are warriors and standing together.
Dr. Laaser is our guest. Mark Laaser, his website is faithfulandtrue.com. And this is quickest hour in radio, as we often talk about. Coming up next is Steve Deace, followed by Tonight, starting at 5 o'clock right here on 99.3. We've got live coverage on the radio of both GOP debates starting this evening, so definitely tune in to that. Our normal evening program will be different, so if you tune in and you hear something that you don't normally hear, that is the GOP debates live from the Ronald Reagan Library in California, so tune in for that. Dr. Mark Laaser, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. Sexual addiction, pornography, it not only does it destroy our lives, but it hurts other people. And maybe you've been the victim of sexual abuse, or you've been the victim of someone who, instead of loving you, has loved a picture on the internet. And my good friend J. Michael McCoy ends his program every day by saying, that person that you need to forgive, maybe that's a person we need to forgive too. And that's hard, and that's painful, and I can't imagine that would be easy. But Jesus reminds us that if we forgive others, we too will be forgiven. As Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, we need to forgive one another. We need to confess our sins one to another, begin to have deep healing. Thank you for listening. 99.3 FM.